Aston Martin has surprised us all this season with how they've been able to make this massive jump in terms of pace from the back to the front of the grid. It was all talk from the owner Lawrence Stroll, but this year he has fulfilled what he set out to do when Aston Martin joined the grid in 2021, and that was to be fighting at the very front. They still have their state-of-the-art factory to be fully built in the near future, so it could get even better for the team as they push forward for even more success. They didn't start the 2022 regulations off that well, but this season in 2023 they look to have made the biggest step forward out of everyone on the grid, with them being on the podium with Fernando Alonso consistently. However, over the horizon in 2026, there will be some new regulations which focus in on the engine side of things. We have seen other teams announce who will be making the engine from 2026 onwards, such as Ford helping Red Bull and many more. As you already know, prior to the Monaco Grand Prix, it was announced that Honda would be providing the engines for Aston Martin from 2026 onwards. In this video, we will go into what exactly this means for the team, how Honda can never really leave the sport even though they have tried to in the past with Red Bull, and finally, how it could possibly negatively affect the team, and Fernando Alonso especially. Let's get right into it, shall we?
The start of a Grand Prix is about intuition.
Very fast reactions.
Intuition and very last moment decision is the key on a race start.
The reason why you clicked this video is to know more about the Honda and Aston Martin partnership that we'll see in the 2026 season. The new regulations that we will see are all around the engine, and there will be a lot of more suppliers coming into the sport for that reason alone. Honda is no different, and they are coming back to the sport to team up with Aston Martin to provide them with the engines that they used for so many years at Red Bull. Until 2026, Aston Martin will more than likely stick with the Mercedes-powered units, but it is very strange for them to be battling wheel to wheel with their own engine supplier. This could be one of the deciding factors when it came to them going with Honda after 2026, as they could possibly be exclusive to Aston Martin. Each team will want to have their own engine supplier, and if one of them gets it right, they could literally rocket ship up the front of the field. We do not know too much about how this deal with Honda will either positively or negatively affect them, but they do hope it can give them an advantage over the rest of the pack in the coming years. The Honda engine in 2021, which was the last time they were officially in the sport, they looked powerful and quick in a straight line. We will just have to wait and see if this move is one of the best in the sport's history or be a flop like the Honda and McLaren deal several years ago, which we will talk about later on in this video. Do you think that this partnership between Honda and Aston Martin will be successful? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Our next topic is how Honda has never really left the sport. Even though they have tried, they just can't seem to get away from it. In 2021, after Red Bull won the Drivers' Championship with a Honda engine in the back of their car, they decided they would leave the sport, but would help Red Bull with their engines. All this meant was that the engine was still a Honda, but will be under the Red Bull powertrain name until 2026, when it will change to Ford, as we discussed earlier on in the video. Honda has a lot of heritage in the sport, but they built a bad reputation due to what happened at McLaren in the mid-2010s. But the 2021 win at Red Bull showed how good of a comeback they have made. When Red Bull decided to drop the Renault engine at the end of the 2018, it was a big shock to everyone due to how bad the Honda had been in the past and how good the Renault engine looked at the time. It was deemed as a bad choice and it would backfire on them. But one of the biggest pieces of how Red Bull and Verstappen beat Hamilton and Mercedes to the championship was due to the engine power that the Honda provided for them. But ever since then they've left the sport at the end of 2021, there have been rumours about them coming back into the sport with a raft of the regulations we will see in 2026. It was talked about how they would go back to McLaren, but they settled with Aston Martin due to how promising they look for the near future. They have the personnel, the drivers, the factory and the car to be a team to break into the big three teams and win a championship. So Honda wants to be a part of that, and was probably one of the reasons why they came back for 2026 is to have their name on the car, which could possibly be fighting for a world championship if all goes well. It is now down to Honda to build a good engine between now and 2026, and they could have more championships under their belt in the very near future. Do you think that Honda has made the right decision to come back into the sport with a promising team like Aston Martin? Or should they have gone for another team? Make sure to drop a comment below and let us know what you think. Our third and final topic is how this partnership could negatively affect Aston Martin, and especially Fernando Alonso the most. Honda has been very hit and miss in the turbo hybrid era. They were successful with Red Bull, as we've touched upon earlier, but the time when they had a partnership with McLaren was one of the worst times for both parties. The engine was horrific, and it just had no power at all compared to the rest of the grid, and it made McLaren kind of a laughingstock in a way due to how bad they were performing. Aston Martin has put all of their eggs into Honda's basket, and it could be a success like Red Bull or a big failure like it was at McLaren. If it was the second one, it could cause Aston Martin to become that laughingstock, and they could sink back to the bottom of the grid if the partnership is not successful. Now, we do not know how it will fare at all, but it is very hard to predict right now, as each team could struggle with the new engines. But I guess we'll have to find out in a few years' time. For Fernando Alonso, it could be very bad for him. He was the driver that McLaren Honda called the engine a GP2 engine, which was painful for both parties. Now, it is hard to say Fernando will still be at Aston Martin in 2026, but it could mean that if he leaves the team sooner due to his bad experience with Honda in the past, if he was to stay on and the engine would be like it was at McLaren, I'm sure that Alonso will be gone very quickly, as he calls that time at McLaren was the worst in his career. But for Aston Martin and Alonso say, we hope that this is not the case, and this partnership will be successful and they will be able to fight at the top of the grid. Overall, this deal is risky but very ambitious for Aston Martin, as they hope that this will be the next step in them becoming unstoppable force that they set out to be. They have everything right now to be successful, and they hope that the Honda engine falls into place and they can win championships for years to come. But this is Formula 1, and anything can happen. For all we know, the Honda engine could once again be a GP2 engine, but it is a long time until we find out what Honda will be able to produce. Are you looking forward to the 2016 engine regulations and what they'll be able to bring to Formula 1? Or would you prefer what the engines are like at this very moment in time? It will be interesting to hear what your thoughts are in the comments below. And thank you all so much for watching this video, and make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more videos just like this one.